Yeah. When you are invited in this space, you are not invited to a party. You are invited to war. So if anybody who has come here to party is in the wrong place. This is a formation of war, and a war to make sure that Kenya remains the republic that is imagined in our national anthem. It's very clear, the destination is very clear. The road is the Constitution. There's no other way. And that Constitution should not be tampered with. There are so many attempts, some good, some bad, to amend the Constitution. But I think right now, the struggle should be to implement the Constitution. And to implement the Constitution, you need political power. And somebody said, we need to register as voters. We need to have a tyranny of votes, which cannot be tampered with. Somebody made another phrase here, commonly repeated, but I don't know if we fully understand it. The expression, we the people. We need to go further and ask, who are the people? It does not say we people. It says we the people. There means there's something distinguishing us from people. You go to the preamble, we the people, recognizing the Almighty God and doing all this, give ourselves this Constitution. You go to chapter 1, we the people are sovereign. We the people can exercise that power directly or indirectly through delegation to the judiciary, to the legislatures at the national and the county level, and to the executives at the national and the county level. Time has come, if we have to make sure that this Constitution does not fail, to ask ourselves, who are the people that we call ourselves we the people? The answer to that for me lies in the words give ourselves and delegate. How did we give ourselves the Constitution? Through a referendum. And the referendum is about votes. How do you delegate power? Is through the vote. And you have to distinguish we the people from the words every person, which is used everywhere. Every person has got this, every person has got the right to do that, every person has a duty to defend the Constitution, whatever. Distinguish every person from we the people. Every person did not give us the Constitution. Every person does not delegate power. And we go to Article 255. Look at how do you amend the Constitution. 256 and 257. If I begin with 256, the parliamentary process, Parliament can amend certain clauses, yes. Can start a bill as they are doing now? There's one bill in the Senate. There are two bills in the Senate, really. There is the 2024 bill by Honorable Cherarke, seeking to extend term limits. The cyclic term from 5 to 7 years, the tenure, the term. It's there. We did what we could do with the bill. At the committee, I happened to be in the JLAC. We massacred it. We told that fellow to withdraw. I think he has got reasons why he's not withdrawing it. So it will be coming some time for second reading, when we hope to nail the final nail in the coffin of that bill. But it's a bill to amend the Constitution. We have got a bill under bill in the Senate to improve the power of the Senate and to ensure that it's bicameralism, where in a very brief way that every bill must have the input of both houses. That one is ongoing. I think we are going to the Bunge Mashinani. The Senate will be going to Busia early October for a week. They're sitting there. There are major issues we need to address there in terms of how the county is being governed. Issues became so big we couldn't handle them in delegations in Nairobi. So the entire Senate will sit in Busia for a week. And then, after that, we are going to be deployed to do public participation across the country. The entire Senate is going to go do public participation across the country. So we are going to suspend sittings and go and try to see what will happen to that bill. Not a bad bill, but there's some consensus building in the Senate that let it not be the sugar coating on poison. So we may have to say to rest that bill also, because it's beginning to turn out that it may be the sugar coating that will be given, so that there's a debate from the National Assembly saying we will support your bill, support ours. And theirs is pure poison. They want to entrench CDF in the Constitution. They want legislators to perform two roles, to execute and to oversight, basically distorting the basic structure of our Constitution. So there is that bill there, being pushed quite heavily. And so in the Senate, we're beginning to build a consensus that let us not, because they even put what they're calling an oversight fund. And in the Senate, I'm happy to say that we agreed we don't want money. Oversight is about capacity. Give us officers in the counties, give us economists, give us accountants, give us auditors, who can then inform us. Don't give us money to go and hire our relatives to come and do what they don't know. So there's that consensus, and I hope that we'll be able to stop that. I just diverse that because, but ultimately, the bills are so foundational that they will require to go to a referendum, if at all they see the light of day. So there's that parliamentary process for amending the Constitution. The other one, in 257, is the popular initiative. But before I go there, in Parliament, who are sitting there? They are members of Parliament, both in the Senate and in the National Assembly. How did they get there? Through an election. So it is still the vote that is amending the Constitution through delegation. We come back to the popular version. You don't just go and look for a million IDs, because an adult Kenyan has got an ID as a standard document, as a basic document. You don't go and look for a million IDs and bring to the house. You look for a million signatures of registered voters. I'm trying to underscore the importance of the vote within the structure of the Constitution. We have neglected that aspect. And that's why every time we lament that Niwale because we allow it. And so, we the people are registered voters, not ID holders. For you to call yourself we the people, you must have a voter's card. And that must sink into every Kenyan. Otherwise, you are in the category of every person. I don't know whether my distinction is making sense. So we must look at the question of elections. That's the Constitution is implemented politically. Even when you go, the judges, Parliament parliament can starve them of money the way they are doing, and now they are doing what the parliament wants. You see? And even those judges, when they are being appointed, look at the role of the elected. Who does the appointment? The president. How do you become president? There's a vote. So even the judge is subject to your vote. So the question with the people needs to be understood. And alongside that is chapter 7 on the elections. Extremely important. We must put our money on making sure chapter 7 is implemented to the letter. That's why the rain begins beating us. That's why we cannot implement this constitution. Because we ignore chapter 7, and then it's not the cream that rises to the top when we ignore chapter 7. It is the rubbish that rises to the top. Then we go lamenting. We must look at chapter 7 and say what does the constitution want? We must answer the question, can we continue having manual elections in this country? Can the manual election give us the attributes we require? You look at Article 81. Among the requirements is that the election must be administered in an impartial and neutral way. Impartiality can be achieved by human beings. That's why we expect the judges to be impartial. We never demand that the judge should be neutral. Now, when they demand that the elections have to be conducted in a neutral way, what do we mean? We need to go down. The elections have to be accurate. The elections have to be verifiable. The question should be, verifiable by who? When you go to Article 138, you realize that during an election for president, the winner garners the majority of the votes cast. Not valid votes, the votes cast. And you have had none other than, and you remember in the Raila one, none other than our Supreme Court had to frame and answer a question. Are spoiled votes valid or not? Now, why didn't the framers of our constitution provide for spoiled ballots? It's because they were anticipating a system that cannot allow for a vote to be spoiled. So that universal suffrage is realized. Our constitution was written at a time when things like artificial intelligence, all these things, internet, whatever, were common things. Technology, digitalization of stuff were common. Today, the government is fighting to digitalize everything because they are saying it's eliminating this, eliminating that, but they don't want to digitalize the electoral process. Why do we want to remain in the Stone Age when it comes to choosing our leaders, and be in the 21st century when it comes to everything else? So we must come down as a people who are gathered here today and put some serious work into chapter 7. Chapter 4 is very important. Chapter 6 is very important. And a lot of work has been done. But hardly any work has been done on chapter 7, and the other one that is equally important, chapter 12, public finance. So, I would like us to put some effort, as much effort as what you've done. And when you talk of a shrinking space, that policeman, those policies he implements, those godfathers are political figures who decide them, who make them. So let us take politics seriously. Let us place politics at the top of whatever we do. That way, we will be moving this country forward. Let us ask important questions. If the Katiba says the elections have to be verifiable, let us go the extra step and ask by who? Verifiable by whom? When the Katiba says that a dispute for a presidential election, a petition challenging the results should be put together in 7 days. Anybody who has done a petition will realize that 7 days are a very short time for doing a petition. And the judges have got 14 days. But if you think digitally and realize that maybe your petition will simply be looking at a server, you may need 2 days to put up your petition and say there's this algorithm I'm seeing here, which is mixing things. The judges will also not need a very long time. And we're not talking about internet voting, we're talking about digital voting, whereby the voters register is downloaded, the KIMS kit is a voting, the KIMS kit is a voting tool and a vote counting tool. Why do we disable those two features in our KIMS kits? That they cannot tabulate the votes, they cannot be used to vote, and they cannot be used to count the votes. These are the questions we need to ask. And as I move forward, I want to look at chapter 12. Everybody is crying that Ruto has run amok. Anybody with that kind of power will run amok. You have both, how you hold, as a Achebe would say, you hold both the knife and the cake. You will run amok. You have all the power. We talk of separation of power. We must reduce the separation of power in the 3 powers that they are. The first is the power of the purse. The second is the executive power, the power of the sword. And the third is the power of the scales, the adjudicative power that's exercised. Our constitution clearly demarcates each of them. But when you come to the Public Finance Management Act, Section 11, when it tries to operationalize Article 225, Clause 1, which says Parliament shall establish, Parliament will pass an act of Parliament to establish the National Treasury. Not just by any legislation. There's a requirement for an act of Parliament establishing the National Treasury. So that the National Treasury is conceived to serve equally the 47 counties and the one national government. The National Treasury was never imagined to be a ministry in the national government. And when you go to Section 11, that's what happens. You are told the National Treasury shall be the Cabinet Secretary for Finance and the Principal Secretary and the departments. And who appoints the National Treasury? Who appoints the Cabinet Secretary? The President. Who appoints the PS? The President. Who can fire or remove them without recourse to anybody else? The President. The pleasure doctrine is entrenched in the way the cabinet operates. At the pleasure of the President, do you hold your office? So we have allowed that to happen, and now when you get resources, when you get the purse or the money together with the executive power and the national purse in one person, you don't have a president, you have an emperor. And then everything else in the constitution gets distorted. Members of Parliament will go through the annual ritual of making the budget, they will do all that. But because they don't control the money, the president already has money, the president decides how that money will be implemented. So there's a budget in the president's head that's implemented, not the budget passed in Parliament. And the budget in the president's head is very, very whimsical. He goes to a funeral, and the key now to unlocking resources is proximity to power, not the budget. So you have to go and bow before the president for you as a politician who has promised that I'm going, when you elect me as your representative, I'll make sure there's no darkness in this village. When the night falls, I'll cut a piece of the moon and hang on every tree in this village, and there'll be light. And you elect him. To do anything close to that, maybe to put up a solar light, he needs not to go and talk to fellow MPs in parliament and say, I need a solar light in a certain village. Can you support me to get a solar light? And the other MP from the other end says, okay, I will support you, but can I also be supported for this? So that now parliament, the sharing of resources is negotiated. That is killed. What happens now is, how close are you to the president, and how low can you bow to the president for him to give you what falls off the table? And if you are going for what falls off the table, you cannot pick what falls off the table when standing straight. You can only pick what falls off the table by bowing down to pick it. And that's why you find that parliament is totally truthless, powerless, because it's no longer legislation that distributes resources. It's proximity to an individual sitting in State House. And that happens because we have not paid attention to chapter 12, how our money is. We must begin not talking about the poor being oppressed. We must begin talking about how many people have been taken out of poverty in this country. The poor will always be there, as Jesus said, but you can reduce their numbers. So we must change our narrative. So the organizing our brother talked of and not stopping to lament means we must choose this anchor provisions in the Constitution. I'm very happy that provision on human rights, chapter 4, has really been taken care of. And chapter 6, enough energy has been invested in that. But chapter 7, there's hardly any energy that has been invested in chapter 7, to a point where you find even the Supreme Court judges have written articles saying the time you have given us is too short. You find the question where the Supreme Court judges have made verdicts saying technology does not work, technology fails. Yet anybody with a scientific mind will tell you that technology never fails, except when it encounters one or a combination of the three: incompetence, negligence, or sabotage. So instead of looking for those three in the claim that the 2013, the technology did not work in 2013, instead of looking for that, they swallowed the lie and came up with the fact that the technology does not work, therefore you need a manual system. So let us invest time in this particular activities, and let human rights be about making people rich, not keeping them out of prison. There's a prison that is invisible out there. Sleeping hungry is a prison. You can walk free on the streets, but you are going to be hungry. Being denied an education is a prison. And all these things require money. They don't require summons. They don't require lectures. They require hard cash. And we must get serious about protecting our money. The framers of our constitution did an excellent job. Many constitutions don't have chapters on public finances. But a constitution like that of Kenya, that of Morocco, that of the Philippines, have these chapters because they were answering a specific need, where those in power used public funds for personal gain. And me as a civic Republican, I'm not a liberal, for those who think I'm a liberal, I'm a civic Republican. And I've always demanded whatever my activity has been, and one reason why I went and became a man solo at some point is because my political ideology is civic republicanism. Having a strong state, having a strong republic. If you look at Article 238, on national security. Having a strong Kenyan state, having a strong economy, having the rights of the people protected, and making sure the common good is the North Star of whatever we do. That is why I'm a civic Republican. And that's why I'm pleading with this grouping today that we go forward and also include chapter 7 and chapter 12 in the agitation you have had, pushing chapter 4 and chapter 6. Let us demand to see rich Kenyans. Let us demand to see wealthy people in the villages. Let us demand to see education as a right being available to everybody. Let us make sure that the opportunities are available to everybody, not only to those who can pay. And if we do that, our movement will move much further. And you'll find that when people are rich, it's also difficult to oppress them. When people are rich, it's difficult to buy them. People coming the whole way from Kisii or from Busia to State House, then they are paid, they're given 10,000 or something, and they are happy. That's a disaster. Not for those, not for the giver, for the receiver. And we must demand to know where this kind of money comes from. You had the other time the president saying that the parliament bribed the people and whatever, yes. But he's the chief architect of that. He referred to the conflict of interest bill. That bill passed through both houses, it went to him. He returned it with a memorandum. One of the things he wanted was to remove the requirement that people must declare the source of their donations. And that was some of their donations. He wanted that out. And it's at that point that he began buying MPs to pass that rejection of his. So let us look at that, but that's aside the point. Concluding, I'm most honored. I'm sorry for attempting a lecture. But if we are the people, show me your voter's card. Thank you very much, and may God bless us.